This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
Man, I got to tell you, I'm starting off hour number 3 here, but I'm looking at the market right now. Shiba Inu is up 91%, 91 and a half, because it's 91.6. 91, it was up in the 50s yesterday. Now it's up 91%. Holy moly. Damn. It's fun, baby. Crypto market climbing. All right, let's get to it. Let's talk a little Miami Dolphins. The man that knows how to ask the tough questions, that is David Furones, of course, from the South Florida Sun Sentinel. And you can follow him on Twitter at @DavidFurones_. And David, much props to you, my brother. One of the things that I've noticed in your work, whether it's at UM or now with the Miami Dolphins, you, sir, are not afraid whatsoever of asking the uncomfortable question. So,
have I earned that reputation? Thank you.
I've given you that reputation already, at least because I've noticed it. So I don't know if others have noticed it. I don't know if others have brought it up to you, because I know I had my share of that when I was doing it on an everyday basis. I'll give you a funny story. We like Heat games would end or Dolphin games would end, and I would have cameramen and sometimes even writers ask, "Hey, are you going to ask about this?" Because obviously it was a controversial thing or whatever. And I'm like, yes, I'm going to ask about it. Yeah. So it was, I always save the cameraman's ass because you know how it is on TV. Most of the time they don't send the host. They just send the camera guy with a camera and the mic. And so the camera guys would love me because I would ask the questions that they definitely needed for their broadcast. So, yeah, so you, sir, remind me a lot of myself in the questions that you do not fear asking the tough ones. So
I know you certainly have the reputation. And even when you have guests on, I'm always drilled by you too. Whenever you put me in some tough spots, which is good.
It's what we do, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then don't do the job. Sometimes you have to ask, and sometimes there are tough situations that we have to address. And so we do that. Hey, one of the things that we have a lot of people picking on Chris Grier, and it might be fair. But one of the things that I brought up, David, is, hey, man, watch out there. Flo has a lot of influence on personnel because Brissett's here because he's a former Patriot, and Justin Coleman, who is terrible, is here because he's a former Patriot, and Kyle Van Noy was here and gone because he was a former Patriot, and so was the center, Karras, and, we can go on and on and on and talk about, okay, Eric Rowe worked out, but a lot of these former Patriots that are coming going, don't kid yourself, okay? This is the coach having a lot of influence in what's going on in personnel. So those people that are so locked in to Grier, okay, you might be right to a certain extent, but don't exclude the coach, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these two guys are tied at the hip, certainly. The decisions since Chris Grier took over as general manager, and then also Brian Flores becoming head coach, it's been a dual effort for sure. So you can't place blame on one without the other for any, and credit as well, and the ones that have worked out. So it goes both ways for sure.
What are you expecting on the O-line? Because one of the things that I was talking about with Flo, and he's the guy that I'm really disappointed in actually through the first month of the season. I think at this point you have to you've moved everybody else around. I think the responsible thing now is to move Austin Jackson to a guard spot or to the bench, one of the two. What are your thoughts on that? Because he's hurting you everywhere.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I agree. My colleague Omar Kelly said the same thing. He feels he's better suited at left guard. Others as well. I mean, I've heard Barry Jackson, the Miami Herald, as well say the same thing. Austin Jackson has shown some flashes in run blocking. I will give him that. We saw that Malcolm Brown touchdown run in Vegas. I mean, he mauled a defender so that it created the cutback lane that Brown had. I think we've seen some good things for him in run blocking. But then in pass protection, he's on that left side. It's been, atrocious. Any word you want to use, any negative synonym you can find for him at left tackle since in these past 3 games. He missed the first one. So yeah, I mean, if you want this first round pick to see if you can work him out, that might be the best move. I just don't see it right now at tackle for him. He's giving up way too much in pass protection. Right now, it's even more so because Jacoby Brissett, that's his blind side. Whereas at least when it's Tua, then he doesn't have the right tackle spot, which is the left-handed quarterback's blind side. So it's really hurting the Dolphins right now. They can't get the deep passing game going, in part because of that. I mean, there's many reasons why that's not working, but I mean that has some reason to do with the fault. And right now, I mean, I would kind of like to see him at guard, and the tackle spots have been troublesome thus far.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. And one of the things you just pointed out, David, and David Furones, of course, from the South Florida Sun Sentinel, joining us. Follow him on Twitter at David Furones _. You talked about him excelling at run blocking. Maybe being in a phone booth, which that's what you are at guard and center, that you're playing in a small space. Maybe that's the best way for him to get better at pass blocking too, because the guy's right in front of you. Whereas obviously on the edges, there are things they do to create space and get you out of your stance and get you out of off balance and those kind of things. Because if he's at least doing a decent job run blocking, maybe also in the pass protection, it might be a little easier for him to do it from that guard spot.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you. I think a lot of the times that we see him give up pressures, it's when he has a lot of space to cover, and then a defensive end, an edge rusher that has those moves can kind of give him that quick step one way and then go the other way. And he's just not quick enough on his feet in that kind of space to react. So I agree with you. Yeah, if he has less space to deal with, then maybe he could just let that big body go to work and pass protect that way, and he'd be more effective there.
David, last year there were things that worked, and this year there are things that work, but you're not doing it at the right time. And so when I look at Flo, and he's the guy that I'm really disappointed in right now in the first month of the season. Gesicki, they used him this past week, but you haven't been using him much throughout the season. Why? Devontae Parker, you're throwing to him at the end of games, not at the beginning of games. You can do these kind of things and draw penalties in the first quarter. Why? Jerome Baker was more of a pass rusher last year. He's not getting after the quarterback. Why? Andrew Van Ginkel was a guy that was way more involved. Why isn't he more involved? Where is the amoeba defense where they just all stood around and surprised people and came at you? What's going on with that? I mean, Myles Gaskin is your best player, and the offensive line sucked last year, just like it does now. And don't give me this shit about pass protection, because if he's running the ball, he doesn't need to pass protect. So, and he's also a terrific receiver out of the backfield, and so is Ahmed's, So why aren't they being used? I mean, I can start to think about all these things from last year or some of the stuff that's going on this year, and I have to ask the coach, what's going on?
Yeah, there's so many of those examples. I mean, a lot of it is that some of these players are just so one-dimensional. Like the coaching staff doesn't trust Mike Gesicki to be able to run block. So then when he's in the game, well, it kind of telegraphs to the defense, well, okay, well, they're in a passing situation here. And then that's why you see him suddenly pick things up in the fourth quarter when they're coming back in Las Vegas from down 11. And then the only thing you can do is throw to get back into the game. Myles Gaskin, they don't trust him clearly in pass protection. But then, when he's in the game, then it kind of insinuates to the defense, yeah, all right, this is what we're doing. He's in there to go ahead and get touches. So it's high likelihood that that's where the ball's going. And I mean, he was averaging 5 yards per carry the first 3 games, even though he was only getting about 9 carries per game and also getting some touches in the passing game. But then just really his usage fell off. Gaskin, I'm talking about this past game. And yeah, early downs, we're seeing a lot of the Durham Smythe and Adam Shaheen combination, and then not a lot of Mike Gesicki. Sometimes you have to wonder as a coaching staff, do you just throw out those dual possibilities and just say, all right, you know what, maybe we are telling you what we're doing with our personnel, but this is where we're best, so we're just going to do it. So you have to kind of weigh these things to get your best players on the field.
Did you yesterday? Did you pick up on the press conference? He basically laid it all on the players. When Tim Reynolds asked him about, are they getting return on their investment of their practicing? And he said, hey, we practice well. We're not making the mistakes in practice, this and that. We're not executing. He kind of laid it
Right.
all on the players yesterday in the press conference. In a way, if they're not making them in practice, but they're making them in games. And and I'm sure different sides of the ball are frustrated with what's going on. So is it a lack of concentration from the team on game day? And is the coach treading some dangerous ground by laying it all on the players at this time? Because I just mentioned to you several things that have to do with coaching decisions that you're not doing and things that could help you out. And players could be saying the same thing I said. Why aren't we using Gesicki more? Why didn't we throw Parker in the first quarter? So these kind of frustrations build up, and maybe there's a lack of concentration. Do you feel the coach is playing with a little fire by laying it all on the players yesterday?
Yeah, a little bit for sure, and it's interesting because that was a shift from where we originally saw during this 3-game losing streak, Brian Flores' stance, where he was putting it on himself at first, saying, it starts with me. We kept hearing that in press conferences, and then Monday was kind of when it first really started to shift, where we're just not executing better. And you mentioned the return on investment from these solid practices that the team is allegedly having that then lead to these still poor performances on Sunday. So and then today we just had assistant coach availability, and obviously usually they echo some of the same things that the head coach is saying. So a lot of what we got as well today from the offensive coordinators, other assistants, was some of the same things. Is that putting it on execution as opposed to a lot of what the coaching staff is doing. So are they covering up for themselves? That's a question right now, or are they in pinning it on player execution and saying that they're not seeing these things during the week? And then it's just that was one thing that Coach Brian Flores mentioned when you said the lack of focus, attention to detail on game days. So it is an interesting dynamic and how it shifted rather quickly.
Your thoughts on the Jakeem Grant trade? I was a big defender of Jakeem Grant, but again, I go against coach on this. I would have never used him anymore at wide receiver. That was the pleasant idea that I thought of when you added all these wide receivers in the offseason. I said, this is fantastic because now you don't have to depend on Jakeem to do anything as a wide receiver. Keep him as a returner. That's where he's strong. And then look at what happens this week, which it wasn't really the norm for him to drop stuff on special teams. He was dropping everything as a wide receiver. So now obviously his confidence hurt. The drop was costly, and now they have traded him to the Bears. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm with it. I mean, you take what you can get for Jakeem Grant. I mean, his salary was even after they restructured it, it went from $4 million to $3.1 million this year, and they cut off the other 2 years. That made him at least uh, something that other teams could go out and get. The Chicago Bears, they saw a little bit of him in the preseason. The Dolphins played against him. He had a nice return in that game, and then also in joint practices. So I guess a team that is familiar with him and wanted to add a returner. But yeah, I mean, are you going to pay that much to keep a guy that is not producing as a receiver? You can't really rely on as a receiver to go out there and then is strictly a return man. And then maybe you get some similar production. I know he has had 5 touchdowns over the previous 5 seasons, but maybe Jalen Waddle can do where at least it's not such a significant drop off for when you're gaining trading him away, and then at the same time you get a 6th-round pick in the future out of it. I mean, who knows what that would be? Probably not much, but understand also. I'm trained by Omar Kelly over here, so Omar Kelly has not been very fond of Jakeem Grant over the years. So,
No, I don't.
and yeah, I'm kind of with him there.
No, I get it. I know that there's a lot of frustrations with Grant. David Furones joining us, by the way. You can follow him on Twitter at David Furones _ catch his work there at the South Florida Sun Sentinel. David, Jacoby Brissett. I mean, I get why they're not going to bench him because Reed Sennett is just too young, but man, I don't know if he gives you a chance to really win a game. And that's my problem with him. If he's going to play so scared early on and then now open it up till the end, it kind of puts the team in a really difficult situation. And he's not accurate at times. And then there's the brain fart in every game. Something happens, whether it's the throw in the end zone, the interception 2 weeks ago, the fumble this past week, and there always seems to be a brain fart too in the game.
Yeah, and that's where I definitely do side with the coaching staff been saying in detailing the execution lacking. Jacoby Brissett has had some opportunities to hit some downfield shots, and the coaching staff has dialed it up in sometimes some situations where they could take advantage of. There was one in particular I recall that Jalen Waddle was pretty wide open, and Jacoby Brissett checked it down. So yeah, he's been playing very cautious. We started off by putting it on the play calling, especially in that Vegas game, and rightfully so. There were some plays there that were very head scratching, but and somewhat still this past game. But then still Brissett had some opportunities and then wasn't finding them, or just was too cautious and wanted to just check it down. He just went to the check down too early in his progression and decided not to take a shot until once you really have to later on. So I think, yeah, that is where you can pin a lot of this on him. And fortunately for the Dolphins, it's been reported that Tua Tagovailoa should be back by the Week 6 game against the Jaguars. So we still have one more week to get by with Jacoby leading the way quarterback. And Brian Flores said he never considered putting Reed Sennett in the game. So I guess he really is there just an emergency backup role for Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, we'll wrap it up with this. I forgot to ask you on the follow-up there. In your eyes, who's going to be the punt returner now?
I would think Jalen Waddle. I think we saw him work there a lot in training camp and preseason. So he would be, my top choice, and especially with his open field abilities with the ball in his hands.
I get that, and he definitely has the skill set for it. But, okay, this coach chose to have a young line in front of an injury-prone quarterback. You got a receiver that's coming off of foot surgery. Should he really be your starter in the slot and a full-time returner? Because I don't feel that that's good coaching decision right there if you do it that way. And then the follow-up to that, I would say, is there any chance that Noah Igbenogany now gets an opportunity? Because he did some kick returning, but I don't know about punt returning.
Yeah, we would see him field some kicks in training camp. So he's another one that would be in the mix. Before Lynn Bowden was placed on injured reserve, he would do some of that as well. But so I mean, he would be the next guy that could possibly be. I mean, he's been inactive for 3 of the 4 games. So Noah Igbenogany would be a candidate if the coaching staff wants to go the way you say. Hey, don't put that much stress on Jalen Waddle. I mean, that is a concern. So I'm with you there. But I mean. I wouldn't play too scared with him. If you have him and then you traded away a returner because you have this guy who has these abilities, I'll take over. I mean, you're already giving him so many targets in short passing situations where then he does go and try to break someone down. So yeah, I mean, he is handling a pretty significant workload with how many touches he does get. So maybe you cut back some in those cases if you are going to also have him returning. But all depends on how his foot ankle can handle all this.
Make sure you subscribe to the South Florida Sun Sentinel. You can support guys like David and guys like Omar Kelly and Ira Winderman and all the great people there at the South Florida Sun Sentinel covering all of our local sports. David, as always, thank you for taking some time, my friend. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You got it. There you go. Good stuff by David Furones.